Soccer player can potentially get her name in the record books this season. Will it happen? Our analysts discuss the shocking disappointment of one fall team, and as usual, we give you our final roars. The weather's cold, but the takes are hot. It's time for Bobcat Breakdown. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Bobcat Breakdown. I'm your host, Liz Flynn, and with me are the best of the best, Ryan Flaherty and Bryan Schwartz. Boys, how are we doing tonight?
Best of the best, Ryan. How about that?
That's some high praise
Great,
right there
Liz
from Liz
Flynn.
Flynn.
How are you?
I'm wonderful. Ready to get started?
Let's do it.
All right, let's start off by taking a trip down Mount Carmel Avenue to Quinnipiac Soccer Stadium. Q30 beat reporter Roberto Casillas took to the touchscreen to break down the men's soccer overtime winner against St. Peter's. Roberto, take it away.
Play the next one. Here it is. Nice play by good play here by Bryan and fantastic finish of Posset. Here, Bryan, freshman, he's been outstanding. 3 assists for the young. We were talking a lot about who's going to replace Rashawn Daly. Well, it's been by committee. It's been a lot of guys, and 2 of them are in this play. So, Asin here, he has to decide whether to go to the middle. He decides to go to the left because that's against the defender's momentum. And can you take it back a little bit, please? Fantastic goal there by Specula. So here we go again. Here, Asin, pause it there, has to decide. He goes against the momentum of the defender who's coming towards him. He goes to his left again, and then look at this. Everyone starts looking at the ball. And when he steps inside the box, he puts his head up. Fantastic awareness. And Specula, who's right there, instead of running towards him or running straight at the goal, he's just patient, good positional awareness. He just stays in the middle of the box where he finds his spot alone. He isolates himself from every defender, so we press play. Look, isolation. He knows he's going to find him there, and he's completely alone and is able to tap it in. Fantastic goal that gave the Quinnipiac Bobcats the victory in overtime.
Great stuff there, Roberto. The men's soccer team is certainly not lacking talent in its freshman class. 2 notable players we often hear about are Tomas Specula and Bryan. But as the season goes on and playoffs creep into our minds, one may be relied on more than the other. Ryan, I'll ask you first. Who is going to be more crucial to this team down the stretch, Specula or Asin?
Well, Liz, I'm going with Asin. And, the easy pick here is Specula. When you look at the stats, he's leading the team in points. He's taken over the Rashawn Daly role. But I like Asin, and let me tell you why. It's because not what he can do necessarily with the ball, but what he does without the ball. He's very creative, and we saw against Canisius, this team is at their best when they're moving the ball through the midfield. They're getting creative. They're kind of attacking on offense, and that's what Asin does. We talk so much about who's going to replace Rashawn Daly, but I think Asin is going to be the next Rashawn Daly. The way that Daly has set up Whalen consistently over the last 2-3 years, I think Asin is going to be that for Specula. Now, Specula has already established himself too, so I think the question here, who's going to be more important down the stretch? I think it's more important down the stretch that Asin plays well than Specula, because Specula has already played well. Specula's established that he can play well. I think for Asin to take over, with him, in the kind of trio of splitting time with Whalen, I think it's more important that he plays well than Specula.
Here's the thing. It is very important that both of them play well. So let's just set that straight. They both need to play well for this Quinnipiac men's soccer team to be good down the stretch of the season. But Tomas Specula has been excellent this year, and I know you said beyond the stats, but if you look at the stats, Quinnipiac's 3-1 in conference games when Tomas Specula scores a goal. He leads the team in points, and that's coming from a freshman at 10. He leads the team with points with 10. Eamon Whalen has 9. Hillinger and Danilou both have 8. Specula started 11 of the 12 games. I think that's a big number, and that shows how much confidence Eric DaCosta has in Specula. Asin's only started 4 of the 12 games. Also, Specula, 2 for 2 on those penalty kicks. That is huge coming down the stretch because you need someone that can make those kicks when given the opportunity, because we've seen in years past, Quinnipiac has not been able to do that, even with a guy like Eamon Whalen. So Specula has been able to do that this entire year, and that's why he's so much more important coming down the stretch, and he needs to play well for this Bobcats team to succeed.
I just think, if there's going to be a by committee approach and Whalen's not going to play, like, think about it this way. Why, if Whalen is the reigning offensive MAC player of the year, why are they taking him out for a player like Braj Austin? He has to bring something, that DaCosta has to be seeing something, that he brings something really important. And I just think he's getting better every single game. You know, he hasn't put one in the back of the net, but I think it's only a matter of time, and I just think he's more important.
There's a ton of guys that are so important on this team, but the guys that are putting the ball in the back of the net, that's what's most important at this point.
Well, guys, only time will tell. And with the season halfway over, let's recap what the team has done so far and what to look forward to. Bryan, what midterm grade would you give the men's soccer team, and what do they have to do in the second half to be successful?
Here's the thing. This team has been really good so far, and they deserve all the credit in the world for that. But right now it's kind of incomplete because the goal is to win the MAC championship, and they haven't done that yet. No team has done that yet, so that's fine. I gave them a B+ just because, again, they're doing really well. They're kind of on the cusp of getting to that upper echelon of the conference, and they can in winning this postseason, but they got to do that first. They still have a little bit of ways to go. They have a couple of games left. They're tied for second in the MAC, which is very good, but you have to win that championship. To me, it's championship or bust at this point, the way the last few years have gone on.
I couldn't agree with you more, Brian. I actually have the same exact grade, a B+. Like you said, they're right where they're supposed to be. They were picked to finish second in the MAC. That's exactly where they are. They're sitting in a tie for second. They're 3-1-1. They only had one slip up against Manhattan. We saw that last year against Iona. They lose a game 1-0 at Iona. That was their only loss last year. They have a 1-0 game this year against a Manhattan team that really could have gone either way. They tie a good Niagara team that was right there with them in the standings. I think the only thing that's missing for me to not give them the A or the A+, is just, like you said, winning that MAC championship, going all the way. Can they finish?
Get there.
We just need to see some more games.
At the end of the season, if they win that MAC championship, it's an A, it's an A+, whatever, beyond that, 110%. But right now, they have to get there first. And that's why they're not in that A range just yet.
And they're a little unproven, too. Defensively last year, they were so good defensively, only giving up 6 goals in 10 games. They've already given up 5 goals in 5 games. So defensively, maybe they're a little worse. Offensively, they're still figuring some things out with Austin and Svekula and Whalen. So not ready to give them an A, but a B+ and a great, first half of the MAC season.
Okay, guys, the game versus Iona this Saturday is our game of the week. Tell me who you got and why. Ryan?
I got Quinnipiac, and I got them 3-2 in overtime. This is going to be a phenomenal game, Liz. This, first of all, is a revenge game for Quinnipiac. As I just mentioned, last year, their only loss was to Iona, 1-0 at Iona. Now they get them back home in Hamden. I think they're going to win this game. They're second in the MAC. They're playing with a lot of confidence coming off a big win against Canisius. I just feel like it's going to go Quinnipiac's way, but Iona's not a team that's going to roll over. Like I said, it was a 1-0 game, a hard-fought game last season, so I think it's going to be a close game. I expect it to go into overtime or come down to the last 5-10 minutes, but I got Quinnipiac 3-2 in overtime.
In conference, at home, Quinnipiac's 3-0, right? Quinnipiac's beaten some of the best teams in the conference this year, too. For the first time since 2016, Quinnipiac will beat Iona Saturday. I absolutely, positively think that Quinnipiac will beat Iona Saturday. I said 3-1. So, look, Iona's a very good team. But again, if Quinnipiac wants to take that next step and get to that upper echelon of the MAC, you have to win games like this. And this would be that first proving ground, kind of, to get them to that next step.
For
Well,
sure.
you'll have your answer on Saturday, guys. We're going to stick to soccer, but let's talk about the women's team. Freshman Megan Phillips has no doubt been a beacon of talent in net this season, posting a total of 6 shutouts, one shy of tying the all-time single-season record. With 2 games left, is she going to do it? Ryan, what do you think?
Yes, Liz, I do think she's going to do it. I think she's going to tie. I don't think she's going to surpass and set the record. I mean, 2 shutouts in 2 games, I just feel like it's asking a lot, again, especially against a Siena team that's pretty good. They're in the middle of the MAC conference. I think she's going to get the shutout against Manhattan. Manhattan is a team that's been struggling. They only really have one quality win this year. I think, they've been shut out twice already this season, and the games that they've lost, they've only scored 1 goal. So I think if Quinnipiac gets out to an early, 1-2 goal lead, which we've seen them be very effective in keeping, they shut down teams defensively. I think they can get the shutout against Manhattan.
All year this year, conference out of conference, Manhattan's been shut out 5 times. I think Megan Phillips will shut out Manhattan, no doubt about it. She's been at the top of the conference the whole season in goals against average and all of those stats for goalies in the MAC. This is a game that she should shut them out, and Quinnipiac has to win if they want to increase their playoff hopes. So I think the Manhattan game, she definitely will do it. Manhattan's not very good, but the Siena game is going to be tough. That's a good team in the conference. That one, Quinnipiac could still win, but I wouldn't book it to say that she's going to shut that out. And also, to have 2 shutouts in a row, that's a tough feat to accomplish too.
Very tough. Even at home, it would be very hard.
Well, guys, Quinnipiac is currently sitting 4th in the MAC with Monmouth, Ryder, and Fairfield above them. Bryan, looking towards the playoffs, who is the ideal matchup for this team going into the postseason?
To me, Liz, there is no ideal matchup for this team. And I'm not saying that because I think Quinnipiac's going to lose. I'm saying that because you just want to get there. It doesn't matter who you play, because to be the best, you got to beat the best, right? So once you get into the playoffs, you're going to have to play whoever it is. It doesn't matter who you're going to play. Yeah, you hope that it's one of the worst teams that's going to make it. You hope that maybe Niagara can sneak into the playoffs as the 6th seed. Quinnipiac wins the last 2 and they get up to the 3. But will that happen? Probably not, because a lot would have to shake out for that to happen. So to me, it doesn't matter. Just beat whoever you're going to play.
I mean, that's great advice, but it doesn't answer the question. So I am going with the exact scenario that you just laid out, Niagara.
Yeah.
It's hard. A lot of things have to happen for them. They have to jump Ryder, and they need Niagara to jump Siena. But if they can get to Niagara, Niagara is a team that they've consistently beat the last 3 years. They haven't beaten Quinnipiac since 2016. They haven't even scored a goal against Quinnipiac in 2016. They're outscored in 3 games 10-0. So the ideal matchup is Niagara. Now, like you said, whoever they play, they have to beat anyone, and they have to be willing and able to beat anyone. But if they could pick, I think Dave Clark's squad would pick Niagara.
Yeah, you pick Niagara, you pick any of those bottom of the conference teams. They lost to Marist already, they lost to Iona already. They still really haven't played Siena yet. They played them in the last game. So those games are kind of up in the air. Of course, you want to play Niagara, but you got to win whoever you play. It doesn't matter. There's no ideal matchup, to be honest with you, Liz.
All right, we are going to take a quick break, but when we come back, the boys wrap up fall sports for the week and we dive into ice hockey. Stick with us.
I'm Jenny Garth, and as a mother of 3, I know kids worry about a lot of things. Getting enough food to eat shouldn't be one of them. But here in America, that is a real worry for 1 in 5 children. This is unacceptable, and something Feeding America is working to solve. Through a nationwide network of food banks, Feeding America serves virtually every community in the United States, including yours. See how you can help your community. Visit feedingamerica.org. Together, we can solve hunger. Together, we're Feeding America.
There are amazing things to discover in the forest.
Toothless, time to go! What you picking up on, bud?
It's a whole hidden world of wonders. And the perfect place to spend time with family. What better place to let your imagination soar? Experience nature and create a memory you can share. Visit discovertheforest.org to find a forest or park near you.
We knew you couldn't get enough of us. It's time to talk some volleyball. The Bobcats defeated the MAC preseason favorite Canisius on Saturday after falling in the first set. Quinnipiac rallied to take the next 3, winning the match. Ryan, does this win prove that volleyball can compete with the top of the conference?
Was plain and simple, no, it doesn't. It proves that they can play well on one day and beat the top-seeded Canisius, but I just think they're so inconsistent. The very next day on Sunday, they lose to a Niagara team that was picked to finish 7th in the MAC. So I really don't think that this mattered too much. They have the pieces in place, they have the players, but they're playing a little too individualistic. And I think even Kyle Robinson would say that they're not ready right now, that they haven't executed well enough for us to sit here and say that they can compete with the top of the MAC.
They still haven't won swept a weekend series. They still haven't won 2 straight Saturday-Sunday games since one of the early tournaments that they played in the out-of-conference. So that doesn't even matter. you got to win 2 straight games before we could even talk about competing for a potential postseason championship. Come on. They're not even close to Fairfield. Let's say Quinnipiac wins Saturday against Fairfield. All right, that we could talk. But right now, I mean, come on. They're not even close to Fairfield. Marist, Canisius. The Canisius win is nice. But you got to really prove it. And this team's young. They've still have plenty of time to grow. There are a lot of good pieces that are going to be back next year. So this is a team that can be there in the next few seasons. But for right now, they're not competing at the top.
It's a building block.
Right.
That's what this one is.
And
this one shows the freshmen and the sophomores that you can compete if you buy into the Quinnipiac culture that we hear so much about. But it doesn't prove anything to me.
And a first-year head coach, you always want to have some of those big-time wins where you show that you're growing. We show the young players we can do this and we can get on. And that's what they did. So it's a good win going into next year. And hopefully for them, next year is the year that they can really compete.
Okay, guys, now while volleyball did hit that high point this weekend, we unfortunately can't say the same about the field hockey team. Sunday's loss to Yale marks 7 straight games without a win. They had the pieces, and they were expected to be better than last year. So what went wrong? Bryan?
What went wrong? Everything. There's nothing else you could say. The Quinnipiac field hockey team has been a disaster this year. I hate to say it because I love Beckamine. I love covering this field hockey team. Nothing has gone right. Hedda Bierman-Rotten's been very good in goal when she's played. Other than that, I mean, it hasn't been good, Ryan. Listen to some of these quotes that Beckamine has said after the game. "We're having one of the worst seasons we've had in the history of field hockey here. Why do you have to sit and wait for 3 or 4 minutes into a quarter to see what someone's going to do when you should be on the initiative on that side? How about this one? Whether it's checkers, whether it's, club rugby or women's soccer, whatever you're going after, why are we sitting and digesting and waiting so much to see what happens?" Beckamine is clearly frustrated with this team. Everybody's frustrated watching this team. They're 1-4 in the Big East, which, yes, we know the Big East is very good. It's one of the best field hockey conferences in the country, and you have some of the best teams in the country. But, I mean, this team just hasn't played well in almost every facet of the game.
I honestly couldn't agree more with everything you just said, and I'm glad you talked about those Beckamine quotes. I mean, let's just stop right there. Your head coach, who's been leading this program for 25 seasons, said that this one is probably the worst season they've ever had. Let's just stop right there. So nothing.
And that's coming from before they were in a Division I team.
So clearly, nothing is going right. Bianca Struby, one of the lone bright spots. She's basically scored a third of their points. But other than that, Hedda Bierman-Rotten, you mentioned her making some key saves, but there really hasn't been anything that's gone right. They're a one-dimensional team, and playing in such a tough conference like the Big East, you're not going to win games like that, and that's what happened this year.
It's tough because they're a very likable team. Beckamine has been sitting on that 200-win plateau that you just want her to get to at this point. It's been, 7 straight games they've lost, so it's been a lost year for Quinnipiac field hockey.
All right, guys, let's now take it to the People's United Center for some men's ice hockey. The U.S. CHL poll came out yesterday, and Quinnipiac landed a spot at number 9 after splitting this past weekend with the University of Maine. We've seen some good things from the team this season, but we've also seen some not so good things. What do you guys think? Are they contenders or pretenders in the top 10? Ryan?
Liz, I'm going to come out swinging and go pretenders. They're a good team. They have a lot of young talent, but that's what they are. They're young. They're inexperienced, and in their body of work so far right now today, they just haven't shown me anything that jumps out and says contenders. I mean, they tie a series against Maine, They win the second game, but if Jeremy Swayman starts that game, I don't think Quinnipiac wins. It was an interesting decision for Maine to sit their goalie that basically stood on his head the night before and stopped Quinnipiac. They're not buying into the Quinnipiac culture and the identity that Rand Pecknold stresses, and they're just young. They're inexperienced. There's 22 underclassmen on this roster. There's going to be some growing pains. I think we're seeing it right now. A few years ago, they were a team that would play well on Friday nights and lose on Saturday, and I think that's what we're seeing, and that inconsistency is not going to work in the ECAC. And that's why I think they're pretenders.
I hate to do the contender-pretender thing because I don't want to say they're pretenders per se because I still think they're a very good team that can make some noise and potentially an NCAA tournament. But they're not a top 10 team at this point. They are way too young. They're way too inexperienced. We've seen it, a lot of penalties early on. They've really struggled in that facet of the game. So this is a team that is young. They need to, again, just like some of the other teams we've talked about for Quinnipiac, like volleyball, they got to take this as a building block here. Yes, there are some pieces on this team that can be really good, and this team can be really good. Keith Petrozelli's been great, and that's a guy that is probably going to have an NHL or an AHL future down the line, but this team right now, I think, is a little bit too inexperienced to really secure them in, cement them into that top 10.
And I completely agree. You know, I'm not going to sit here and write them off, but
Right. Yeah.
I think
Look,
now,
if they were 8-9 and great, I mean, I definitely couldn't disagree with that, you know?
yeah.
Well, guys, you pretty much said it. They're not perfect. So let's focus in on one issue men's ice hockey is currently facing. So far this season, the Bobcats have had 20 power play opportunities and only converted on 3 of them. On the flip side, they've put a player in the box 14 times. Bryan, I'm going to ask you first. What is a bigger issue right now? The lack of power play success or the number of penalties this team's taking?
I'm going to go with the penalties because of the way that Quinnipiac has kind of played after they've gotten into those penalties. The opponents are 4 for 13 on power plays against Quinnipiac. That's 31%. That's not good. And if you're going to keep getting into these penalty situations, then the Bobcats are going to need to improve the penalty kill. And so far, they have not been able to. I know it's only, 2 weeks since they've started playing, so it's very early, but you can't have a percentage like that against you. 31% is way too big. And because they're such a young team, I don't know if that's going to change. Look, Rand Pecknold is a very good coach, but to have such a young team, there are going to be players that are undisciplined. And to stop penalties like that, it's tough. There's only so much that a coach could do, and I don't know how much Rand Pecknold can do with such a young team.
You know, I went back and forth on this a lot because I think a lot of what you said is really important, but I do think that it's the power play. I think last year this team was 38 and 147 on the power play, which is 26%. I'm not quite sure where that stacked up in the nation, but that is had to be one of the best power plays in the nation. Chase Prisky was lethal on the power play last year, and for me, that was a huge reason why they were able to go so far to win the Cleary Cup and get into the NCAA tournament. This year, as Liz just mentioned, they're 3 of 15. They're only 3 of 20. They're 15% on the power play. That's just not going to cut it, and they're not scoring goals. So I think, you know, the penalties can work themselves out. That's something that players can get more discipline. They can coach that up. You can't coach scoring goals. You can't coach putting pucks in the back of the net. And I think if that doesn't change, then we're going to be in for a rough year.
Yeah, and look, I mean, you touched on it with Chase Prisky. That's a guy that this team could use right now. You could use a real veteran piece that's been there, that's done that. And that goes for being a top 10 team. It goes for the penalty kill. It goes for the penalties, power plays, whatever it is. It goes for everything that you need a guy like that to step up, whether it's going to be Nick Germain or whoever else it is that's a veteran piece on that team. Somebody's got to step up and be that voice and say, hey, we have to really improve in all of these facets of the game.
Well, moving from one locker room to another, the women's ice hockey team is home this weekend to face Sacred Heart University. Here's what head coach Cass Turner had to say about the upcoming series.
We're excited to play Sacred Heart. You know, I think for us, we want to really be sure we're ready to play our best hockey every time we step on the ice. And they gave a great game to Mercyhurst, and they're just coming off 2 wins. So it should be a good matchup for us.
This is going to be the Bobcats' first game in 2 weeks. Ryan, as the women's ice hockey beat reporter, I'm going to ask you first. Is this long rest going to end up being a trap?
No, I don't think it is, Liz. And, you know, you just heard Cass say they're excited to play Sacred Heart. We went to Media Day today, and Sadie Peart and Kenzie Prater, they both said they're excited to get back out on the ice. Prater talked a lot about the compete on this team. It's a different culture. It seems like a different vibe in the locker room. They want to compete. Everyone in the locker room wants to win. And for me, I think that's so important. They've been off for 13 days, but they're competing in practice. They're playing against each other in practice at a very high level, and I think that's going to carry over into Sacred Heart. I think that, you know, this is a team Quinnipiac beat last year, Sacred Heart. It's a team that they should beat twice at home, move into conference play 4-1-1, and I think they'll do that.
To me, when we talk about a trap game, that's something that we as talk hosts and reporters who would talk about, it's not something that players think about. It's not something that coaches think about. We talk to coaches and players all the time, and they're always like, yes, we're not taking these opponents lightly. They're a good team. They have good players. We hear it all the time. And Cass Turner said it herself. They're not taking Sacred Heart lightly. Nobody thinks this is a trap game other than, I don't know, maybe the producers of this show. So, look, it's not a trap game. They're going to come prepared, and Quinnipiac's probably going to win.
And one thing I found interesting, too, is they said the tie for Maine didn't sit well with them. Last year, they'd be happy to walk in and get a win, get a tie. They're hungry. They've been sitting 13 days on a tie, and they want to get a win, 2 wins this weekend.
Okay, guys, great stuff. We are going to take one more break, but Final Roars are coming up next. Don't go anywhere.
They call me Maxie, but I prefer tripod. I was your above-average four-legged homie, and then wham, bam, minivan. Some people pity me. Now that's lame. I still run, fetch, and swim. And the ladies love me. I'm the ultimate wingman. Just don't ask me to high five.
Welcome back. Glad to see you stuck with us. We are coming to the end of our show, so it is now time for the Bobcat Breakdown staple, Final Roars. Ryan, kick us off.
Transitioning to Division I athletics is tough. It's why we don't expect much from incoming freshmen. They're not expected to lead teams, set records, or even score points for that matter. Their first year is about adjustment and development, not contribution. But that's not what the class of 2023 is showing us. Let's start with soccer. Megan Phillips is one shutout away from tying a single-season program record, while Markayla Bailary and Olivia Scott continue to rack up weekly MAC accolades in an already deep midfield. Tomas Fakula leads the men's team in points, a team that has reigning MAC Offensive Player of the Year Eamon Whalen on its roster. And he might not even be, Fakula might not even be the player on the team that's most important, with Braj Austin and Henry Wigan making immediate impact. Ava Veldhorst may be the lone bright spot on what seems to be a lost field hockey season. Ariana Diaz is one of only 2 freshmen on the volleyball team, but she's 4th in kills, 2nd in digs, and leads the team in assists and aces. Alexa Hoskin and Sadie Peart were named back-to-back ECAC Hockey Rookies of the Week, and Kate Rowley has been proclaimed one of the hardest workers on the women's ice hockey team. Not to mention Ethan Lay has scored 2 goals, and Edmonton Oilers draft pick Skylar Brindamore has been impressive from the first puck drop for a nationally ranked men's ice hockey team. Yes, they may be inexperienced, and at times they show it, but trust me, Bobcat Nation, they're not coming, they're already here.
It's not often I care a lot about preseason polls or meaningless rankings, but this one got to me today. The MAC announced its annual preseason poll as voted on by conference coaches. The Quinnipiac women's basketball team was picked second, the same team that's won 3 straight MAC titles, 52 straight wins against conference opponents, and has 3 NCAA tournament victories in the last 3 seasons. All that gets you second place in the MAC. You've got to be kidding me. Don't give me the 5-star that just graduated. That's great. Who cares? This team is still a force to be reckoned with. This program is still led by one of the best women's basketball head coaches in the country. Yes, Trisha Fabry is the top coach in the country. They have a strong upper class and budding underclassmen stars that no one wants to talk about. All in all, who cares? All that matters is who's cutting down those nets in March, and I know, you know, and we all know this outstanding Bobcats program will be there. This silly little poll doesn't matter and shouldn't matter. The MAC coaches got it flat out wrong.
Well, 30 minutes have come and gone, and that is all the time we have for tonight. Special thanks to the producers, crew, and everybody else behind the scenes to make all this possible. Be sure to check out our website at q30tv.com and at theqbsn.com, and follow us on Twitter at q30sports and at qbsn. From Ryan, Bryan, and I'm Liz Flynn. See you next time. All right, note to self.